Welcome back. Domain 2 Technologies and Tools. In this video we're going to see implementing DNSSEC practice lab. Lab requirements: VMware or VirtualBox, Windows Server 2016 domain controls, a Windows Server 2016 domain member server, Windows Server 2016 domain member server, and then Windows 10 domain workstation. Task for the lab. So we're going to do preparing. The first task is preparing DNS setup for DNSSEC. The second task is configuring, how to configure the DNSSEC. The third one is how to customize the DNSSEC. So let's go for the first topics, preparing DNS setup for DNSSEC. So the domain name system security extensions, or DNSSEC is shortened, so we can say that. So DNSSEC is a set of extensions that adds an additional layer of security on DNS server by enabling response sent to DNS client to be validated. So when a DNS resolver queries a zone that is signed by DNSSEC, the authenticity and integrity of its response are ensured with the use of security keys. So in this task we are going to see how we will prepare the requirement to successfully test DNSSEC on Windows Server 2016 by creating a new zone, adding resource records, or installing a non-authoritative DNS server, and lastly installing a secondary domain controller. So let's go to the machines, a domain control. So this is a domain control server. So here we can see that create a zone. So we can use a primary zone, which is the writable zone in DNS, to test zone signing using DNSSEC. So to keep the current configuration on the server safe, we will need to create a new zone for testing purpose. So in this task we are going to create the zone. So for that, the server name, tools, you have to go to the tools on the domain control. So we are right now in the domain controls. So then tools. So on the DNS, so the DNS is opening. So on the DNS manager, so we can see here the server name is already there. So we have to right click the forward loop. Here we can go here. So and then right click the forward and the new zone. So in the new zone wizard, so the welcome to the new zone wizard, we can now click proceed next, and then on the zone type, so verify the primary zone options, and then this option is the default settings. I have to click next setting, and then we can now, so we can leave it as default. That is the default settings. Then click next. So here we have to type the name, the zone name. So then click next. So on the dynamic window here, so keep the default selection to allow only secure dynamic updates. So then proceed next. So it's taking time, yeah. So here is we can just click finish button. So it's loading, yeah. Let's wait for some time. So we can keep the DNS manager windows open. So we will now, the second one, so we will now going to create a sample resource records. So how do we create the sample records, like host A, that will be used later for testing name resolutions with the DNSSEC. So we are now going to connect the domain control server. So we are now we are right now in the domain control. So we are going to create the sample resource record. How to do that? So for that, so you need to right click, so on the zone creator, right? So on the zone, right click. Here we have to create a new host A. So we need to type here www like this, then IP address, so IP address is the same one, meaning the same domain control IP address. So then you just leave it as it is, so don't need to tick anything. So then click add host. So once you click add host, so it has created successfully. So you will need to create another one, www2. So you can see here's the another one is created. So this one, this IP address from member server. So this is a member server IP address. The previous one is a domain control, the one we are now creating. So try add host. Just click add host, proceed add host. So the two record is created successfully. So we can now click done. So you can see here the host 192.168.0.1. So domain control IP. This one is a 192.168.0.2 is a domain member server IP. So we have now created successfully. So now we are going to create a non-authoritative DNS server. For that we have to connect the member server. So now connected the domain member server. So this is a domain member server. So here we will see how to install and configure a new non-authoritative DNS servers. So these servers will not be used for resolving names in the lab networks. So the setup I created, so as it is not host any writable DNS zone, so it will be used instead of storing DNSSEC key from domain control server that is hosting secure.practicelab.com zone. So we are now going to do that, create a non-authoritative DNS. For that, manager, tools, Windows PowerShell, so in the Windows PowerShell, here is loading. So to install DNS on the member server, so we need to type this command. Okay, so now it's installing. So the DNS is installing now. So please wait for a while. The DNS feature is being installed. So we will now come back. So okay, the DNS server is installed already. So we can now go back to the server manager dashboard. Tools, DNS, then DNS manager. You can just right click, property. So on the member servers here, so you can just right click, properties. Here you have to click to forwarders. You can just click edit button. So on the edit forward, we need to enter this domain control IP address. So this is domain control IP address. So we have now added successfully. Okay, you can now add it as a forwarder server. So the tick mark you can see here. So now click OK. So DNS will attempt to resolve 192.168.0.1 to the host name domain control. So this will take a few minutes. So it's done. Okay. Then it's apply. Then click OK. So now we are going to create a secondary domain control. So we can see how to create a secondary domain control that will be used to demonstrate how DNSSEC keys are transferred between DNS server that are running as a domain control. So how do we do that? So we need to go back to the domain member server 2. So this is domain member server 1. So and then domain member server, the other member servers we have to connect there. So this is a domain member server 2. Okay. Okay, this is a domain member server 2. So here we need to open the command prompt. Run as administrator. So here we need to enter this command. And then password. So it's done, the password is done now. So you can now see here a new Windows PowerShell is open already. You can see the difference. So why I enter this command, run as user practice lab administrator. You can also directly open the PowerShell. So this is just for learning stuff. So that's why I enter this command. So anyway, so here the PowerShell. Okay, now it's installing. So now in the PowerShells, so it's installing the Active Directory domain service. So I just entered this. It's now started installing. So let's wait for some time. So once it's completed, so then we go for next step. So 87%, the AD domain servers going to complete. Okay, so AD domain service is now AD domain service is now installed successfully. So we're now going to install the secondary domain control for the domain control lab. For that, so this is a domain name. So looks there is a small typo. So let me try again. So there is a small typo there in the controller. So I can see there is only one L. So here is a double L. Okay. Enter. So okay, now this password is you need to enter the password. So the domain password. So once you confirm the password, we can just click proceed as. So you can try enter the A. A means yes to all. Okay, so here. So please wait for some time. The secondary domain control is being installed now. So once the domain controller, the secondary domain controller for the domain is installed, so we will then go for the next task. Okay, it's done. So you're about to sign out. So now we are now going to see the second task. So configuring DNSSEC. The second task is configuring DNSSEC. So it means, so the configuring DNSSEC on your zone is a easy and straightforward process using the DNS manager, as most of the important settings for signing the zone are provided by the DNSSEC wizard. So in this task we will enable DNSSEC on the secure.practicelab.com zone. So the one we created earlier. So then we distribute the keys with the use of trusted or anchors among servers and verify the configuration. So a trusted anchor TA is a public key that is associated with the specific zone that is been protected with the DNSSEC. So when distributed among DNS server, the trusted anchors form a chain of trust that is useful for validating DNSSEC data among server. So let's go for it. Okay, let's go for that lab. Okay, so domain control now. We are in domain control. So we can now just right click and then DNSSEC, then assign this zone. So in this tab, so the domain name system extensions, security extensions is suite extensions that add security to DNS protocol specifically. So authentications and stuff. Okay, we can just proceed next. So here, so use the default settings. So this is the one. So how to make sure you have to select this one. Use default settings in this to sign the zone. So click next. So we will now proceed. Can just review the summary. So what we enable everything. So and then click next. So the zone signing process appear momentarily. So it's now finished already. So you can now check. You can refresh and check again once again. So this refresh button, we can see that all the records we created, everything is updated now. So you can see all the content here. So host with the host EA record. So we created the 192.168.0.1, 192.168.0.2. So okay, just leave it DNS manager. So open. So before that, so what we see, installed and configured a non-authoritative DNS server on the member server. So the purpose of setting up a non-authoritative DNS server is to test the distribution of DNSSEC key, also called trusted anchor, among DNS servers such as non-authoritative DNS servers and domain control that is running as a DNS server. So a trusted anchor is a set of key that protects a DNS server as it signs the zone and validates DNS response to DNSSEC our client computers. So the domain control, so we can now go to click File Explorer. So just leave it here. So here the File Explorer, open the File Explorer. So on the PC, local disk. So in the local disk we can see here the Windows and then System32. So we now go to the DNS. Where is the DNS folder? So here the DNS, on the DNS you can right click on share with advanced sharing here. So in the DNS property, click the advanced sharing. Here you can see the you have to select the share this folder checkbox, and then leave it as a default. So you can then click OK, apply OK. Then similar, you can just close it. You can just close it, the DNS property. You can just close it. Now we can connect the domain member server. So we have done this domain control, so we are now connect the domain member server. So this is domain member server. So in the domain member server, so we need to ensure that DNS manager, you can see that is everything what we configured earlier. So expand this domain member server, and then trust point. On the trust point, you can just double click. So you can, or you can just right click and import and DNS. Oops, sorry. Import and DNS key. So the DNS key, we're going to import so the domain control DNS key set secure.prat. So we are now importing this key set. So key lab domain controls, the domain controls. So we are now importing the key from domain control. Practice lab. So just make sure everything is right. So the key set. Okay, now done. So in the DNS managers, now we can now expand the trust point, and then practice lab, then click secure folder. So you can now see this, the record here, the key. So we need to verify this DNS key trusted anchors. So after the distribution of DNS key trusted anchor to the non-authoritative DNS server, we will now test if the trust anchor can be detected by DNSSEC aware clients such as Windows 10, Windows 8, higher version, Windows 8, and then the latest version of workstations. So in this task we are going to use the Windows 10 machine. So we will check that going the Windows 10 machine. I'm going to connect the Windows 10 machine now. So this is a Windows 10 machine. So here the Windows 10 machine, I'm going to open the PowerShell. PowerShell, run as administrator. So we have to now enter this. Okay, So now we enter. So we can now see the command detected the list of DNS key trusted anchor whenever it is found on this network. So it's now the 2 keys. So now we can see the distribute trusted anchors to a secondary domain control. Typically DNSSEC keys are copied to other DNSSEC for redundancy, and they create an island of trust between the DNS server that hosts the signed DNS zone. So in this task we are going to see how we will replicate the DNSSEC trust anchor to a secondary domain control that we previously configured. For that, so we are going to connect the domain control. So the task is done in Windows 10. So we are going to connect the domain control again. So this is the domain control. So in the domain control, so open the DNS server manager here. So then right click the zone we created and then DNSSEC and property. So in the DNSSEC properties, we will now click on the trust anchor. So in the trust anchor, so we can now see this two options here. So we need to select the enable the distribution, the first option, enable the distributions of trust anchor for this zone. After that, click OK. So here just proceed, click X, click OK. So you can see here the configuration of DNS parameter was successfully done. So then proceed. So keep the DNS manager open. So we'll now connect the domain member server 2. So this is the domain member server 2. So here we can recall the server. It was previously configured the secondary domain control. So just go to the tools, DNS. So here you can just click here, expand the domain member server 2, expand the trust point, and then here we can see the trust point. So just refresh the edit refresh so that I can see the .com, right? So here click secure. So you can notice here the DNS key is highlighted, is existing here in the domain control. It successfully is done domain member server 1 and domain member server 2 from domain control. So we shared in the domain control this key, so we have done successfully here. So we will now check the similar records under the forward lookup zone. So we can see here so all the record is successfully updated. So you can see that you can notice here the replicated resource record from the secure.practicelabs.com zone domain control from domain control. So just leave it the domain DNS manager. So we are now going to see query a signed zone without DNSSEC validation required. So meaning the secure.practicelab zone
has been signed with the DNSSEC. So in this task we will test it if a signed zone can be queried with the DNSSEC validation. How to do that? So we need to connect back the Windows 10 workstations. So this is a Windows 10 workstations. We can now query this server. Okay, you can see here the successfully queried here. So the result of the resolver DNS name query command as displayed. So now you can notice here the workstation shows successfully response as the DNS set trust anchors are successfully in the base, so in the network. So everything okay. So now we can verify the DNSSEC validation is not required. So for that, okay, sorry, there is a small typo. Okay, there is a small space. So now we can try enter. Okay, since no result is given, it means that there is a policy for DNSSEC validation. So now we can configure support for DNSSEC in group policy. Okay, so GPU. So the name resolution policy table is used to require DNSSEC validations when a DNSSEC our client queries a DNS server. So name resolution policy table is configured through local GPU for local testing or domain GPU for domain environment. So in this task we will configure a domain-based GPU to require DNSSEC validation to query the signed securepracticelab.com zone. Okay, go for it. So we are now going to connect domain control. So domain control. So in the server manager dashboard, tools, group policy management. So in the group policy management, expand the forest practice lab node. So there you have to click practice lab domain and then practice lab, the one you created the zone, right? The domain name. And the domain on the domain practicelab.com. So you have to right click and then create GPU in the domain name. So here I'm going to create the new GPU as DNSSEC. Then you can click OK. Okay, we have done now. Okay, detect now. You can now see here, so once you click the detector, so one domain controls replicate and synchronize. So we can see, you can see as well as a DNSSEC is created here. So DNSSEC GPO is now listed under the domain. So I can now close it. Okay, so now we can right click the DNSSEC, edit. So in the group policy management editor, here go to configure. Computer configure and policy, expand Windows settings, the Windows settings, and click name resolutions. So you can see the name resolution is displayed on the right side. So here in the create rule, under the create panel, into which part of the namespace does this rule apply? In this section we need to make sure the suffix. Okay, so here, so sometimes it's a different setting, so you need to make sure the suffix. Okay, so then you have to enter the zone. Forward zone domain. Okay, here just scroll up. So here you need to select this box under the DNSSEC, enable DNSSEC the rule. So after that, under the validation, select the required DNS client to check that name, address, and data has been validated by the DNS server. So you have to enable this. So this one and this one. You will now create it. You will now click create. Can now create. Okay, now you can just scroll down. Here you can see under the name resolution policy table, you can see the name, the created. You can now apply. Okay, so once you apply it, you can close it. You can close the group policy management editor. So in the same window, the server, close it. So in the server manager dashboard, so we need to open the PowerShell. You can now update the group policy. For that, so let's wait for some time. Okay, group policy update has been completed successfully. So we will now get the DNS client NRPT policy. Okay, enter. So now it's done successfully. So you can notice the DNSSEC validation required is true. So you can now minimize the windows. So now we have to query a signed zone with DNSSEC validation required. After setting up a domain-based group policy for DNSSEC validations, we will now run a query to resolve resource record on the signed secure, the signed secure.practicallab.com zone. Okay, everything we done in our domain control. So we now connect back to the Windows 10 workstation. So in the Windows 10 workstation, we can ensure we can check that we need to update the group policy. So once it's done, we need to doing the same thing, querying a signed zone with the DNSSEC validation. What we did in the domain controls, we're doing the same thing on the Windows workstation. So get dash DNS client .pt. Yeah, so you can also see the same thing on the workstation. DNSSEC validation required true. So then in the next command, to resolve DNS name with the DNSSEC validation validation configures, we need to enter the command resolve So notice that there is no difference between earlier result and the result DNS name. So this is because a valid trust anchor is presented on the member server 1. So the query is successful even if the DNSSEC validation is required, as it has been completed earlier via domain GPO. So you can just leave it as it is. So in the next part, we will now attempt to resolve some resource record. So within the secure practicallab.com. Okay, about that. Okay, let's wait for some time. Okay, we can now see here. So once we enter this command, so this is how you can try check or resolve some resource records within the secure, the zone forwarding. Okay, in these labs we used secure.practicallab.com as a zone, forward zone. So we have now tested. So the host record www here, right? So you can see here So it was successfully resolved. So you can just scroll down through the result. So view other details in the host record. You can see here, host record here. Okay, that's it. Okay, now the third one. So we are going to see now customizing DNSSEC. So last time the first one we said we done successfully preparing DNS setup for DNSSEC, and then second configuring DNSSEC. So the third we are going to see customizing DNSSEC. So let's go for it. So normally the DNSSEC wizards provide a set of default settings for signing a zone. So in a similar way, you can sign a zone using a customized settings by using a DNSSEC feature of the DNS manager. So you can, for example, a change in the security key, the domain control. So for example, which hosts the secure.practicelab.com zone. So this will, the security key on the domain control will create a mismatch among the DNS server that hold a copy of the trusted anchor key. So therefore, the new security key needs to be updated on all the server to enable validations. So in this task, we are going to see how we will unsign the secure.practicelab.com zone and resign it using custom parameter. You will notice the effect of the resign DNS zone on the other server that hold copies of the DNSSEC keys or trust anchor from the first sign. So let's go for it. So first task, we are going to see unsign the secure zone. How do we unsign the secure zone? So we are going to connect the domain control. So this is a domain control server. So ensure that DNS manager, just open the DNS manager. So the DNS manager is open. Expand, okay, it's already done. The forward lookup zone. Then secure lab zone. So we can now right click on the zone and then DNSSEC. We can now unsign. Oops, sorry. We can now DNSSEC unsign the zone. So in the unsigned zone, DNS security, click next. Here, finish. So we got a confirmation, a zone has been successfully unsigned. So now we can now refresh here. So notice that update here. So a lot of entry, the record is not here. So this indicates it's now regular DNS zone. So just reopen. So now we're going to reassign the secure.practicelab.com with custom parameters. To sign a zone with the customized keys, we will define the key master parameter and new keys. So in this task, we will see how to sign the secure.practicelabs.com zone again using custom keys. So thereafter, we will delete the existing key from other server and specify a new key. Connect domain control. So we are going to here. So we are on the domain control right now. So right click again, the same process, and then going to sign the zone, and then next. So here you can see the last time you remember, so I told you that customized. So last time you said that use default settings in the zone last time. So now we are going to check customize zone signing parameter. Then click next. So here on the key master, so we need to ensure that DNS server these settings is selected. Now proceed, click next. So here we can click here. So now we have to remove the thing. So select you have already selected, we have already selected this, and then remove the key. So now we are going to add. So click configure. So here under the key properties, so cryptographic algorithm, we're going to choose 512 RSA SHA 512. So in the same section, the key length, we are going to select 40,96. Okay. So please note the stronger the cipher strength is, the larger the overhead will be on the server to perform the encryption process. Now proceed, click OK. So now go back. So you can now see here is added the new key. The new key, the key length is a 4096 and then 512. Now click next, then next, and then click just make sure the settings, everything. Click next. So the next secures, so we don't need to touch anything. Click next, and then under trust anchor, proceed next. So on the sign pooling parameter, click next, don't touch anything. So now click next, so finish. So it's now successfully signed in. So now we're going to refresh the thing here, so we can now see the lot of entries, resource record, host A, host, everything you can see here, or a signature, resource record, signatures, everything. So after signing the zone with custom parameter, we must update the trusted point created earlier between the domain control, domain member server 1, member server 2. So now on the here the domain control, you can just restore the we can just open the PowerShell. Okay, enter. So you can now see that the key successfully validated, the one we created, right? So 512, you can see that RSA SHA 512, so it's now successfully updated now. So now we can refresh the trust point that were previously configured on member server 2 or member server 1. So for that we have to type the PowerShell command. Like the same commands. So just replace the host name, domain member server 01. This is the same command, so just replacing the host name. Enter. Okay, now successfully done. So the same things, the domain member server 2. So done successfully. So we can now check if there is any failed and unsecure validation. So how do we check that? So on your non-authoritative DNS servers, the DNSSEC keys must be copied manually to enable validation. So in this task, so we will now copy the key on member server to test the validation on a non-authoritative DNS server. So to see failed and unsecure validation, so we need to perform, we need to go back to domain member server 1. So the domain member server 1 can just refresh here. Let's refresh. Okay. So we can just right click and clear cache. So clear cache. So try one more time. So we can now enter the command on the Windows 10 server. We can now connect the Windows 10 server, so workstation. So we will now check this command. DNSSEC, okay. So we can notice here the error message. So you can see here is failure error message because this is because the automatic update of trust anchors on a non-authoritative DNS is not supported. So this means the trust anchor must be manually imported to domain control. So we can now just connect back to the domain control. So this is a domain control 1. So here we can just open the PowerShell again. So in the PowerShell, we'll try this, try to remove that. Okay, now proceed, yes, enter. So the DNS trust anchor has been successfully removed. So to resolve your name after removing the trust anchor, type the this command. So you can see here the successfully done. So last time it was not there. So we have removed successfully. So then we now connect back to the Windows 10. Here we can see the zone forwarder. So www.secure. The first one is already getting this error message, and the second one is also getting www.2.secure.practicallab.com. So the DNS name resolution failed because the old trust anchor was previously removed successfully. So this is a unsecured DNS packet message. So the reason we are getting is appears in Windows PowerShell. So the trust anchors is successfully removed. The key the previously removed. So that's it for this lab, guys. So please subscribe my channel, press the bell button, share this video if you like. So this is a big video, so just slowly play around the practice lab, so you will get idea. So thank you guys, thank you so much, bye bye.